shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the Hello, good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 22nd of December. I've got no idea what day it is anymore. Do you know what it is? Are you ready? I'm not. This is the weekend on GB News. That's the one thing I do actually know. Now, the breaking story from yesterday is an ongoing story. Overnight in Germany, hundreds of protesters took to the streets calling for mass deportations following the massacre which killed 5 people, including a 9-year-old child. It comes as the Saudi Arabian government claimed they repeatedly warned German authorities about the man suspected of driving a car into the crowds. We will bring you the latest on that breaking story, which does continue to develop. Meanwhile, over here, Rachel Reeves is dubbed the Grinch of Christmas, as it's revealed 45% of your charity donations, yours, remember, go straight to the government. Reports also suggest a new grocery tax aimed at achieving net zero targets is set to cost British households up to £1.4 billion annually. Merry Christmas to one and all, eh? And if you're thinking of escaping, planes, trains and automobiles, passengers face a last-minute scramble to find travel alternatives as mass cancellations continue havoc up and down the country. Have you been able to make it home for Christmas? Are you just going to give up? Sit and watch me on telly, it's a much better idea. And a bridge over troubled water. Nigel Farage has offered his services to our new US Ambassador, Lord Mandelson, who's been described as, a moron by one of Trump's top aides. Just how important is the reform UK leader going to be over those next 4 years? Hello, yes, I am Dawn Neeson, and this is the weekend, and yes, I do appreciate I do look like a Brussels sprout. is a slightly sparkly Brussels sprout, and you probably shouldn't eat anything that's this sparkly because it's dangerous, kids. But hey, come on, it's the Sunday before Christmas. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your company. I know there's an awful lot to do, and I must confess I did manage to get a present last night. I'm really pleased with myself. Still a few to go though. But this show is all about you and your views, especially at this time of year. It's a very special time of year. And so if you're feeling lonely and you want to chat, get in touch with us. Let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about today, or, as I said, just to have a chat. It's really simple. gbnews.com/your say and joining our conversation. Brilliant panel it's the last show before Christmas. Wow. Keeping me company is a political commentator and former special advisor Claire Pearsall, as well as her husband, political commentator for GB News, the wonderful Nigel Nelson, who has not made the effort to be. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news with the wonderful Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you very much. It's just after 1 o'clock. The top story this lunchtime. Well, 5 people are dead and over 200 injured after a driver used an emergency vehicle lane to plough into a Christmas market in Magdeburg in Germany. Authorities there are coming under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received last year but deemed unspecific at the time. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and ministers have faced angry hecklers during a visit to the site of that incident, as questions now mount over security and how the attack could happen. Social media giant X, owned by Elon Musk, is also being scrutinised for failing to act on the suspect's threatening post before the attack on Friday evening. Security has now been ramped up across Germany and the rest of Europe, with armed police patrolling festive events and Christmas markets. Here, meanwhile, Labour's Lucy Powell has admitted the economy is disappointing, likening the efforts of the government to turning around a huge oil tanker. She says Labour inherited unprecedented challenges, including falling living standards and underfunded public services. It comes after the Office for National Statistics reported the economy shrank by 0.1% in September and October, with no growth expected at all this quarter. Well, the Commons leader told GB News earlier today that the government does share the public's frustration, but she insisted progress is being made.
People voted for change at the election because the country was, let's face it, going to the Swanee. We had the economy tanking, with living standards having fallen for the first time in a generation, and public services absolutely on their knees, with huge waiting lists in our NHS and elsewhere. So it's a bit like turning a really big oil tanker around. We've begun to start moving it in the right direction, but there are many fundamental challenges facing the country.
However, the Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Hollinrake has claimed the situation is now far worse under a Labour government.
The economy is tanking, as we know. Business confidence has gone through the floor. Family businesses are having to make difficult decisions in terms of their investment because of things like business property relief changes, and same with family farms. So you're seeing this right across the economy why business confidence is dropping, and that's having a real-world impact on our economy.
The BBC is under fire for refusing to air Freezing This Christmas. That's a parody of Sir Keir Starmer about the withdrawal of winter fuel payments despite its chart-topping success. The track, raising over £47,000 for Age UK, has been labelled a victim of two-tier broadcasting as critics point to past political songs like Stand Down Margaret that were aired without any issue. Dean Ager, the singer behind the parody, plans to perform the song at Parliament Square in protest. But the BBC insists its decisions reflect what the audience expect to hear and deny any claims of bias. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, says he is deeply sorry after his handling of a priest at the centre of sexual abuse case came under scrutiny. David Tudor was banned from ministry this year after admitting to serious abuse, but was twice reappointed to senior church roles. The Archbishop admits things could have been handled differently, but insists legal constraints prevented earlier action. Bishop Helen Ann Hartley says it's now impossible for Mr Cottrell to remain in post, arguing survivors and safeguarding must come first. And the pre-Christmas getaway grind isn't letting up anytime soon. The AA has predicted more than 21 million drivers will hit the road today, capping off a weekend of record-breaking traffic. Yellow weather warnings for gales are in place until 9 p.m. They're adding to the strain and grounding flights at Heathrow and also stopping a number of ferry services. And the Met Office is warning of continued disruption and even power cuts into this evening. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Miss Brussels Sprout.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam, and he can call me his little Brussels sprout. I've been called far worse, to be honest with you. As I said, thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Really appreciate your time on this very busy day, but it's a bit cold outside, so I'll just pour yourself something hot and warming to drink. Your choice, obviously, could be alcoholic. And just chill and enjoy the festive show we have lined up for you. So let's get straight into today's story. Now, we have to start with the breaking news this week and the continuing developing story of that devastating attack at the Christmas market in the German city of Magdeburg. And overnight, hundreds of protesters took to the streets calling for mass deportations following the massacre, which killed 5 people, including a 9-year-old child. It comes as the Saudi Arabian government claimed they repeatedly warned German authorities about the man suspected of driving a car into the crowd. The suspect has been identified as Talib al-Admulsan, a 50-year-old Saudi doctor that German's interior minister says holds Islamophobic views. Now, if you look online, all sorts of theories on social media about this story and what this man's beliefs were, what they weren't, conspiracy theories. We're not about to talk about that. We're here to talk about the facts of this story, and because it is a horrific story, and there's no getting away from the fact our own Christmas markets now have barriers up. We have armed police patrolling them, so we can't avoid it. We have to talk about it. As I said earlier, I've got political commentator and former Special Advisor Claire Pearsall, as well as senior political commentator for GB News, Nigel Nelson, with me this afternoon. Now, Nigel, there's not an awful lot we can talk about this story. It has developed overnight from the original attack, in as much as there were demonstrations on the streets in Germany calling for mass deportations of the... We know Germany, since Angela Merkel opened the doors to migrants 9 years ago now.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Been flooded, over 1 million migrants have come in. There's been a lot of ill feeling. Obviously, the Germans are coming up to an election in February.
Yep.
The ADF, the far-right party, are very popular, and this is playing right into their hands. Many of the supporters on the streets last night about deporting migrants. What do you make of how this story is developing the way it's going?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to deporting the migrants, that was sort of, if you like, almost an inevitable backlash when you find that it was a migrant who was suspected of being responsible. So that was the first thing. I don't think it helps terribly on the basis that we really need to know what the motives were here. Yeah. They are very confusing. I mean, all we seem to understand now is that the suspect was Islamophobic. He was a Saudi Arabian doctor. He appears to have supported far-right politicians in Germany, particularly AfD, and that's all we know. And some strange, rather erratic posts that he put out. So we're not talking about a straightforward Islamist attack or something like that.
We don't know the reasons
behind that is the point. I think that's the point. So when it comes down to, until we actually have a clearer idea of what motivated it, the important things as far as lessons to learn is to make sure that Christmas markets everywhere have the right kind of protection to stop this kind of thing happening.
Do you think, I mean, the political reaction in Germany, Claire, has been, you know, ordinary women. There was a woman interviewed I was listening to this morning, and Greta, 65, she said that the city, Magdeburg, Germany's former communist east, she says it's changed significantly over the last 8 years due to mass migration, and she's really unhappy. She's an ordinary pensioner, obviously devastated by what's happened. What do you think things like this mean for the political situation in Germany and by extension the whole of Europe?
Well, I think it's quite interesting when you look at the level of anger from individuals in the street, and quite rightly so when you see an atrocity such as this. So you can understand that they feel the government aren't listening to them, that Angela Merkel, as you say, welcomed everybody in by opening up the borders to pretty much everybody some time ago. And real people every day living on, in these towns and cities feel that they're not being listened to. They feel that their towns and cities have been changed beyond recognition. They don't feel comfortable. But if they raise their concerns, then they are told that they're either racist or bigoted or whatever it is. But I think that they have the right to voice concerns, and that is going to be part of the election process that comes up in February. I think that Germany is in for a real change. But politicians need to be able to have these conversations. They need to be able to listen and deal with it, rather than having knee-jerk reactions, telling people they cannot say something, or indeed imprisoning them for putting something on social media. I think that we all need to have a conversation. We need to be understood and be allowed to discuss it.
It's interesting, Nigel, isn't it? Even the new hard left BSW party in Germany I'd say they're weary of mass migration, complaining about refugees as well. Ukrainians in their particular case, which they are saying is a drain on Germany's schools, hospitals and dentists. And this just seems to be, not so much with Ukrainians, but with migration in general, something we're hearing from so many countries in Europe now.
Yeah, and I think that it's something that seems to be climbing up the political agenda. It's not there at the top at the moment. Always the cost of living, the economy, they're always the top issue. But migration is certainly going up. Germany is a particular example, obviously, where they took so many migrants in. We've just returned from Poland, which took in 1.5 million Ukrainians. They seem to settle there perfectly happily. There doesn't seem to be a major problem in the same way that they've settled here. But yes, the mere fact that so many people are coming in and to so many countries means that it will go to high up the political agenda, and obviously it gives right-wingers a chance to have a go at immigration, which causes all the ills, and of course it doesn't. It's something that needs to be dealt with, but it's not the huge problem some people make it out to be.
But I also think that people see it as something that is being put upon them. So it doesn't matter necessarily where people have come from. As you say, there have been issues with Ukrainians that you just mentioned. If people feel that they're not being asked their opinion, they're not being discussed, they're having something put upon them without a debate or a discussion, I think that always breeds contempt. And it doesn't matter where the individuals have come from. It also doesn't matter about the circumstances surrounding it. If you see a large amount of people being brought into your town or city, getting the services that you pay for and quite often can't access yourself, I think that that's what breeds contempt between communities. And that's what you need to sort out. So as a government, you need to look at what your immigration policy is going to be in general, and you look at where people are settling to make sure that you haven't got 20,000 going into one small area that just cannot cope with an influx of that number. And I don't think it's an unreasonable ask of the general public. And I think that politicians in any country need to understand that. But it does seem in Europe that they haven't had a discussion. Everybody has just migrated into certain areas. And this is going to be the outcome.
So you're talking about better planning?
Yeah, absolutely.
But not against migration as such?
I've never been against migration. And what I dislike is a large amount of people being put in a community where they're not going to fit in, whereas the community isn't set up for a large influx of people wherever.
To a certain extent in Ireland,
absolutely,
the Republic of Ireland.
And that's it. So it doesn't really matter what the country is, or indeed where refugees or migrants, whatever you want to call them, where they're coming from. It is just the sheer number of people going into a small, dense area is always going to cause a problem. And I think that you need to look at, how many people you have got coming into your country, and this is any country, but also sensibly trying to look at where your job opportunities are, what your infrastructure looks like, so you can't put them all in major towns and cities and expect it just to cope, because it can't cope with the population that it has at present. So, yeah, better planning needs to have a proper forethought.
Which makes common sense, and the more you ignore the situation, you know, like that lady I just quoted, an ordinary pensioner in the city where this happened, saying there are too many foreigners here now.
Well, but again, I can understand that.
Racist,
yeah,
does it?
no, I don't think it does. I mean, I certainly don't think controlling your borders is racist. It's something that every country has to do, including ours. I mean, the reason I mentioned about to Claire about planning is that what we've ended up with in this country is a lot of mixed messaging. So, for instance, we were, under the Tories, we were encouraging foreign students to come and study here because they funded the universities. They were paying up to £30,000 for tuition fees. That helped fund the universities. Then there was the backlash against the idea of these students bringing in families. So the Conservatives then backtracked on their own policy, which was the idea of having 600,000 students coming in a year by 2030, and then stop them coming. And this is my point, that you can't, if you're planning a policy, stick to your plan. And that's where we've actually, yeah, and that's where things have gone wrong.
This is an interesting message. This is from Sue, by the way, and Sue says the fact that Poland, as you mentioned, you've just come back from, had no issues with Ukrainians is because they are not Islamists. The people are migrating from countries that are Islamists is where the problem is allegedly coming from. Do you think Sue's got a point there? Is it a clash of religion and culture that's causing many of these?
I think in some cases it is, and you can't ignore that sometimes the belief systems of people coming in are not going to be compatible with the communities that they're going into. So what you do about it is the more important thing. I think for most refugees, there actually isn't an issue. But unfortunately, there are communities who are suffering with the views of a minority of people who have come into this country with different religious views. And it's always going to cause an issue. But it's how you manage it and it's how you deal with it.
That's the question, Nigel, isn't how do you do that? I mean, how do you encourage people coming from a completely different culture to try and integrate? Or do you not try and get them into it?
Well, no, I mean, the integration thing is important. And one of the draws, I think, that for Britain is the fact that a lot of these people speak English. I mean, we exported, because of our empire, we exported English across the world. So many people now speak English. That will be a natural draw, for instance, to this country. Because of that, there is you get over one barrier, so you can start to educate and try and then assimilate people into our own culture and our values. All that becomes important. For the most part, we actually do that, and it's quite successful.
Every time someone mentions, oh, people want to come here because they all speak English, I say, well, why are we spending so many million on translators? Translators, even. I need one this morning. I can't talk properly, but it is Christmas. Come on. Right, OK, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, gbnews.com. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. We'll be discussing Rachel Reeves, who has been dubbed the Grinch of Christmas, as it's revealed 45% of your and my charity donations go straight to the government. Are you happy with that? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
So, how did you get into radio initially?
It's the old thing. You do discos.
Yeah.
Back in the days when you used to put needles on.
What sort of year we're talking about?
Oh, it was black and white.
OK.
That's the closest you're going to get.
Beatles, Rolling Stones?
Yeah. Sort of later than... Yeah, sort of a bit later than that, doing discos. But then you sort of do a tape. I did a tape for BBC Radio Manchester, the local BBC station. And just one off, got a copy of that, edit. Yeah. Naively thought, everybody's going to send a tape to Piccadilly, which was the Manchester station, which was 73. And instead of that, a couple of years later, I sent a tape to Radio City in Liverpool, not thinking that everybody in Liverpool's going to be sending a tape there. And just a guy just went, I'm too good for this, doing the overnights, walked out, and my tape was on the top of the pile. And I got a phone call on a Thursday night, Thursday, the 12th of February, 76. Can you do 2 till 6 in the morning on Radio City in Liverpool? I thought it was one of my pals.
And what was you talking about on that radio show?
It was an overnight programme, so it's music.
Yeah.
In those days, you didn't have much needle time, but clever devil here noticed that the BBC stuff was not needle time.
Yeah.
So I used to put like the Goons on and the Hancocks. So you've got half an hour and me and the security guy, Bert, on the door. We're the only two in the building. Yeah. I used to get in my car, put the Goons on, get in my car, dash down to the pier head, get a bacon butty, listening to it all the time, hoping that the record's not stuck, and then dashing back.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for joining me on this festive Sunday, the last one before Christmas. And you're not ready, are you? I know I'm not. So should we talk about the Grinch? I have come dressed in a suitable colour. Rachel Reeves has indeed been dubbed the Christmas Grinch after analysis by the Mail newspaper revealed her budget tax grab of 40... the budget tax grab that she announced in the budget that was encouraging growth, that one. It means that 45p of every pound donated to charity will go to the government. Now, how's this working out? Meanwhile, ministers are accused of quietly pushing a green levy on businesses for packaging waste, set to raise household bills by up to £1.5 billion a year. This grocery tax, as has been dubbed, could add £56 to your annual shopping costs, as businesses naturally pass the charge on to us, the customers. So, is Rachel Reeves the Grinch of Christmas, or all year round, to be honest with you? Let's pose that question to political commentator Peter Spencer. Peter, this does all sound a bit Grinchy, doesn't it? And it wasn't getting many headlines, and it seems to be snuck out just before Christmas, so in the hope that we don't notice. But, 45p in the pound of every pound we give to charity is going straight to the government. That doesn't sound right to me. What's going on here?
Well, what's going on here is that the government decided not to increase national insurance on employees, but is increasing it on employers. Now, charities, however small, are still a business, and therefore they do have to pay the national insurance, and inevitably that's going to get passed on to, or rather siphoned away, I should say, from donations to the charities in question. I mean, there was an attempt last week to get them exempted in Parliament, and it failed. But I mean, there's no getting round the fact that before the election, Labour might have been a little bit wiser not to rule out the main sources of revenue, which are, of course, income tax, VAT, and national insurance on employers. Consequence, they've had to duck and weave, and there's been a fair few unintended consequences along the way. But the fact is that since the American-led financial crash of 15 years ago and the austerity that followed, pretty much all our public services have been in make, do and mend mode, and chickens coming home to roost. It needs money to fix it, and I do have to say that I went for a walk a little while ago in the woods, had a good look at the trees, and, I couldn't see any money growing on any.
Yeah, funny enough, we do need a forest at the moment. We've got a black hole that people seem to mention all the time. And the little tax story that we want to talk about is the grocery tax. What's this one about?
Well, this actually was originally an idea of the last Conservative government, and then they bottled it because of so much dissension from within their own party. And what it amounts to is a serious attempt by the government to cut waste, and particularly plastic waste, because it is better for the environment that way. And there's going to be, there's a price tag attached to that as well. But then I think that it's hard to dispute that it is quite good for the environment. And here I am sat in Cornwall with being beaten half to death by storm after storm. Leads me to the conclusion that when Donald Trump said that climate change is a myth, I'm not altogether convinced.
OK, thank you very much, Peter Spence, for joining us this afternoon, and wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas down in storm-battered Cornwall. Peter Spencer, thank you very much for joining us. OK, now let's see what Claire and Nigel make of this one. Two stories, two of the front pages today. I wouldn't want to be Rachel Reeves. Rachel Reeves at any time, to be honest with you, but certainly not on a Sunday when these stories seem to come out. I mean, two Grinch stories, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's not really surprising either, is it? So we've had granny tax, we've had farmer tax, we've had school tax, now we're having grocery tax and also charity tax. I mean, is there nothing the Labour government wouldn't tax if it stands still or it just moves slowly?
Yeah, income tax, VAT and employee national insurance.
Oh, yes, but employers' national insurance, which I think is going to cause a lot of problems in the new year. Happy New Year to you there, Nigel, defending that one. But I think that when people give to a charity and you tick the little box for gift aid to say you want your contribution to go to that charity, the amount that you pay in tax, you tick a box and you go, the charity should have it.
And they'll get it. But it still gets
minus
that.
a whole load of money now from the government because of the national insurance increases. Those charities that employ people are going to have to pay out more.
But we're back
where's the fairness here?
We're back to the same old problem. If you don't get the money from, if you're going to use employer national insurance to raise money, it means that everyone has to pay it. That includes charities for their own workers. It includes GPs who are private businesses. And the question then comes down to, if the money doesn't come from there, where should it come from? Should we get more from pensioners? Should we take more off farmers rather than just 20% in inheritance tax, make it the standard 40%? It's got to come from somewhere.
But it isn't really going to come from this either. This idea that it is going to grow the economy when you've got a bunch of big business leaders saying that they aren't going to employ people because of the extra costs now upon them.
Well, let's see. We'll see about. We'll see. I mean, everybody who is taxed squeals about it.
Yeah, but you can see that these charities that provide really important services.
But then, do you exempt them? Do you then exempt them from? They've always paid employer national insurance for their employees.
Exactly.
Do you now say, right, we'll exempt the charities? And if we exempt the charities, shall we exempt the hospices? Shall we exempt pharmacists? Pharmacists who do a great public service in dispensing essential medicine.
Do you know what?
They pay it too.
They need to scrap the whole idea because it isn't.
Then where does the money come from?
Oh, here we go. Why not go after the big sort of tax avoiders, which
is they're doing as well,
part of the campaign,
which is what is happening.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's what we don't hear about, isn't it? They're taking it off of the vulnerable people, they're taking it off elderly people, and now charities. And now people like you and I are going to pay more for shopping because of some ridiculous net zero green
Not if the supermarkets do what the tax is intended to do, which is to stop using as much plastic packaging as they do. Why, for instance, when you and I go out and buy apples or pears, are they dressed up like astronauts?
Well, I don't disagree with you.
We could actually get those things either loose or in cardboard packaging. So if the supermarkets change the way they operate, that means that they won't have to pay the tax in the first place.
But there are things that will probably be more expensive than cheap plastic, and you know they're not going to swallow that cost themselves. They are going to pass it on to the consumer.
Or they can change their practices. I mean, why can't we buy things loose rather than always packaged up?
But the thing is with the supermarkets, I mean, they are also going to pay this same national insurance hike. hike for their staff.
They are indeed, yes.
It's going to be another expense to have to reassess all the packaging in their stores and try and go greener as well. So people are going to lose their jobs, and we're all going to end up paying more for our products.
But then it comes back. But then we're into the whole climate change argument. Do we want to try and get to net zero? I think we're actually losing the battle to get there by 2050 anyway. But if the nearest we can get there, the better. If we don't do these things, we won't. So yes, it'll be a bit of an inconvenience. It will mean changes. But if we don't do it, this net zero is never going to be hit, and global warming just carries on until it's out of control.
But we also, with the plastic, any sort of recyclable packaging, we pay our local authorities to deal with the recycling. And local stores, everything, they have to put in, that's coming through all their different taxes that they have to pay to have a shop in a certain area. That money is already being paid to local authorities to deal with the waste that comes from supermarket shopping. So where's my rebate then on my council tax if I'm going to have to pay it even more again to a supermarket or already paid?
But you're approaching it from the extra money you will have to pay, rather than from the idea that we could actually change behaviour by the big supermarkets, so that you won't need to pay the tax if you don't have all this plastic rubbish around.
Unfortunately, we are finishing up now, but most supermarkets do give you recyclable bags or paper bags, for which they charge you for.
Yes.
Why is that then? Any case, we have been moving on. I'm Dawn Leeson, GB News, and there's plenty more coming up on today's shows. Planes, trains, automobiles. Thousands of travellers face a last-minute scramble to find alternatives as cancellations continue to cause chaos up and down the country. But first, let's get the news headlines with the very unchaotic Sam Francis.
Dawn, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Fast approaching 34 minutes past 1. Well, let's start in Germany, where 5 people are now dead and over 200 injured. That's after a driver used an emergency vehicle lane to plough into a Christmas market in Magdeburg. German authorities are now coming under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received last year but deemed unspecific at the time. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and ministers have faced angry hecklers during a visit to the site of the incident last night, as questions now mount over security and how the attack could happen. Social media giant X, owned by Elon Musk, is also being scrutinised for failing to act on the suspect's threatening posts before the attack. Security has now been ramped up across Germany and the rest of Europe, with armed police patrolling festive events and Christmas markets. Labour's Lucy Powell has admitted the economy is disappointing, likening the government's efforts to turning around a huge oil tanker. She says Labour inherited unprecedented challenges, including falling living standards and underfunded public services. It comes after the Office for National Statistics reported the economy shrank by 0.1% in September and October, with no growth expected at all this quarter. Well, the Commons leader told GB News this morning that the government does share the public's frustration, but she insists progress is being made.
People voted for change at the election because the country was, let's face it, going to the Swanee. We had the economy tanking, with living standards having fallen for the first time in a generation, and public services absolutely on their knees, with huge waiting lists in our NHS and elsewhere. So it's a bit like turning a really big oil tanker around. We've begun to start moving it in the right direction, but there are many fundamental challenges facing the country.
Well, as we were just hearing from Dawn and the panel, household shopping bills are set to rise by up to £1.4 billion a year. That's under a new grocery tax aimed at meeting the UK's net zero targets. The levy will be charged on businesses based on packaging materials and costs largely passed to consumers, adding as much as £56 to annual bills. Critics warn the scheme rolling out in 2025 will only fuel inflation and impose red tape. But supporters argue it's a vital step towards cutting waste and boosting recycling, with the government also promising 21,000 jobs in the sector. And the pre-Christmas getaway grind isn't letting up. The AA has predicted 21.3 million drivers will hit the road today, capping off a weekend of record-breaking traffic. Yellow weather warnings for gales until 9 p.m. are also adding to the strain, grounding hundreds of flights and stopping a number of P&O ferry services. The Met Office is also warning of continued disruption and even power cuts into the evening. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. A full roundup at 2 o'clock, and Dawn will be back with you after this short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We've got some cold and windy weather in store across the UK at the present time. Things will be turning milder as we go through the Christmas period, but a lot of cloud around too. Certainly a windy picture today. A low pressure system towards the north-east of the UK, tightly packed isobars, indicating a brisk north to northwesterly airstream, and certainly very windy out and about through the course of the afternoon. A wind warning in force across many northern and western areas until 9 o'clock this evening. Could see gusts of wind around 50 to 70 miles an hour in a few spots. Lots of showers feeding in that north to northwesterly flow as well. Wintry, particularly towards the hills of Scotland and across some other northwestern areas. So the best of the sunshine the further south and east you go. And wherever you are, it's a chilly feel, 6 or 7 degrees at best, but feeling closer to freezing out and about given the strength of the wind. As we head into the evening and through the overnight period, those showers start to ease down, but we hold on to quite a few across Scotland, certainly through the first part of the evening. Still some wintry showers to contend with in places. The best of the clearer weather at this stage towards the south and west of the country. For Northern Ireland, some clear spells, 1 or 2 showers towards the north and west there, and 1 or 2 showers feeding through the Cheshire Gap into the West Midlands too, into parts of North East Wales, but many southern spots. Ending the day on a dry note with some clear spells around. The winds and the showers start to ease in as we go through the overnight period. Still gales for a time towards the north and west, but as I say, those winds will ease down. Plenty of clear weather then going into the early hours of Monday. Could well see a touch of frost by Monday morning, certainly across some northern spots, 1 or 2 icy patches in places as well. Temperatures in towns and cities generally holding up above freezing, close to freezing though in 1 or 2 really sheltered spots. As for Monday itself, well, we start the day, plenty of sunshine towards the south and east of the country, and holding on to some sunshine here into the afternoon. But notice towards the north and west, cloud thickening from the west, some outbreaks of rain moving in across many northern and western spots as we go through the day, accompanied by some milder air, but notice towards the south and east, it does stay quite chilly. Temperatures towards the south and east of the country, 5 or 6 degrees, out towards the west and northwest, 8 degrees at best.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Newsom. Thank you for your company on this festive Sunday afternoon. Now, I hope you are sitting comfortably because you're not going to go anywhere. Thousands of travellers are hoping to reach, well, holidays, even travelling back home for Christmas, are having to organise last-minute alternatives as flights, ferries and trains continue to be cancelled. Over 100 flights at the UK's busiest airport, that's Heathrow, have already been cancelled today. The Met Office has predicted high winds mean the rate of arrivals, normally as many as one every 80 seconds, is extended, reducing the number of planes that can be handled. Joining me now is a travel correspondent at The Independent, the wonderful Simon Corder, who is normally somewhere sheltering from... Oh, no, actually, it looks quite calm where you are, Simon. Simon, thank you for joining us. Again, it's another story of woe for travellers.
It is, I'm afraid, Dawn. Yeah, I'm talking to you actually from Vienna Airport, where the weather outside is abominable, but things are arriving and departing more or less on time. Exactly as you say, it's London Heathrow which has got the really big problems. And that flow rate, if you're going to have the busiest two-runway airport in the world, which Heathrow definitely is, then you need to get those planes in on schedule. The air traffic controllers knew yesterday there were going to be problems, and so they ordered the airlines to cut back on the number of flights. Just to keep you in the picture for that, by far the highest number, 80 cancellations on British Airways, short-haul European and domestic routes going in and out of Heathrow. But we've also seen cancellations on Lufthansa to and from Frankfurt. A Virgin Atlantic flight to Miami was taken out as a result of this. And we've just heard that Logan Air from London, the City of Derry Airport to London has also been grounded. But if I can put that into perspective, actually, this is the busiest day of the winter at Gatwick, at Stansted, at Manchester airports, the three biggest airports after Heathrow, and things are going pretty smoothly. The only issues I'm seeing, and if you're half an hour or an hour late, well, just take it on the chin. The only issues are really at Funchal Airport on the beautiful island of Madeira, which is closed because of high winds. Poor old people who were heading off from Gatwick to Madeira flew around in circles for 45 minutes, and then they diverted to Tenerife. There's worse places to be than that. The inbound flight has been cancelled. So those people, well, some of them, I'm sure, will be enjoying an extra couple of days in Madeira at the airline's expense. Others will be worrying about whether they can get back.
Yes, I mean, road users are also being warned of delays, with 23 million people expected to trek across the UK at the moment. That's an awful lot of people.
Yes, and I hope, well, of course, all your lovely viewers will be sitting at home or wherever they are watching GB News, and that's a really good place to be this afternoon. I give it until about maybe 6 o'clock this evening when things are really going to ease off. Of course, we've got high pressure on all the big motorways. We saw actually earlier the M62 across the Pennines between Leeds and Manchester closed for a while because of snow. It's going to get easier later. And if you're travelling tomorrow, they're calling that Manic Monday. And, well, you might be thinking, let's take the train instead. That's going to be quite challenging. St Pancras International Station closed completely for the Midland Main Line going to Leicester, Nottingham, Derby and Sheffield. Other closures go in, well, really from tea time on Christmas Eve. And some of them, like Liverpool Street in London, busiest station in the UK, that's going to be closed till the 2nd of January.
Oh, my Lord. Simon Calder, Merry Christmas. Thank you very much. I love you to bits, but you never cheer me up, Simon. Thank you very much for...
I didn't set out to be the voice of travel doom. I want everybody to get where they're going to be, but I have to tell it like it is. Most people will get where they want to be and have a wonderful Christmas.
And we hope you and yours do as well. Thank you very much for joining us, Simon Calder, the travel correspondent at The Independent, who cycles everywhere, by the way. There's a reason, there's a travel correspondent who cycles everywhere. Put those two things together. Well... It's the same old story, isn't it?
It is a bit.
Every single year, the roads are going to be busy, the trains don't work, and the weather's a bit rubbish.
We used to have just come back from Poland, and I'm sure Poland gets the most appalling weather all the time. Yeah. So certainly in the winter. Any problems?
No.
None.
No.
We've just flown in from Iceland, where, I mean, literally driving and flying through the most horrendous, complete blizzard. No one turns their head.
Well, we were in Lapland a few years ago, and the same thing, that there was constant snow, temperatures were about 10 below zero, and everything worked perfectly.
Yeah. But it was on the flight back from Krakow. They were de-icing the wings, so they were going under the big de-icer, and everything just ran perfectly. Yeah. Until we got back to Gatwick, and then it all fell apart.
In Iceland, we were lucky enough to go there just after the volcano had erupted, but they had lava flying across the road. Their version of the M25 right there, lava throwing across it. But they it's like, oh right, it's lava. Okay, we'll just go round this way. It's lava. It's like it wasn't a problem. When we get one leaf on the line, and it's that's it. Oh, that's it. Not going anywhere. So, in any case, good luck if you are travelling out there. Yeah, it would be good to get somewhere nice, wouldn't it? But you can always just sit and watch GB News, or if you're travelling, you can take us with it on your radio. It's a good idea. If you are indeed in search for some winter sun, there's a forecast for you for the top European holiday destinations.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast. If you're travelling over the Christmas period, it's certainly going to remain unsettled for central parts of the Mediterranean. There's an area low pressure brings some strong winds, some heavy rain and also some snow to the higher levels. Something a little bit quieter for parts of Iberia, plenty of sunshine to be had here, but then down towards the Canaries, still the risk of some showers, although it will improve here as we approach Christmas Day itself. Temperatures in Madeira reaching around 20 degrees on Christmas Day.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Oh, that's quite nice, doesn't it? OK, I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and lots of you have been getting in touch throughout the show. I'll be getting to them after this, so keep them coming in, gbnews.com/your say.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, like, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset by his
There was a
wedding.
bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out because...
exactly. They had turfs on the...
turfs.
Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, as I keep saying, and I do mean it, this show is all about you and your views, especially at this time of year. So I'm actually now going to read some of that. gbnews.com/yoursay, by the way, if you want to get in touch. My favourite one so far, not quite sure, it's going to be Nigel. I was going to read this one out, and this is from Julie. Julie, you say, quite rightly, Julie, Dawn, you always say this show is about you, the listener or the viewer. So, please tell Nigel... That's you. He's talking a load of rubbish. Instead of keep asking where all the tax money will come from, tell the government to spend it more wisely.
Fair dues, yeah, it's a fair point.
That's a very good point.
Very sensible.
Yeah, thank you. And Claire agrees with you on that one.
Definitely.
Talking of Claire. This isn't that Claire, though. This is Claire who's got in touch. Claire says, Labour turning the oil tanker in the right direction. That was one of their other phrases, wasn't it? As well as change and working people. It's more like steering it into the rocks and turning it into a shipwreck. Not a lot of love in the room, is there? Patricia says, I'm guessing Claire and Nigel have a very lively household.
Yes, we do.
We do, yeah. I feel like a bit of lively debate is there going on. And on that push towards net zero, Catherine says, we cannot sort out global warming out on our own. People in this country for something that cannot be sorted out while other countries continue to ignore it. I myself believe it is a natural phenomenon and cannot be stopped. What do we make of that one? It's controversial. Lots of you get in touch and say similar things.
Yeah, and I agree to an extent, is that we can't do it on our own as one small country. When you look at the likes of India and China, who are pumping out much more polluting stuff into the atmosphere, they're not rushing towards net zero.
Well, but they are. This is unfair.
The
whole thing is we must do our bit, and I appreciate. OK, only 1% of our emissions, world emissions, come from here, but we are responsible for an awful lot more. That we are the fourth biggest polluter if you take it back to 1850. So America, China, and Russia are ahead of us.
Remembers 1850?
No, I know, but the whole thing is. This is all cumulative. The greenhouse gases have been building up, so we're responsible for an awful lot of them. What China argues is a small change in China will do more than a big change in Britain, and they are doing their bit.
I don't see the Chinese government forcing all the individuals to have ground source heat pumps for their house, and you must have an electric car because it's good for the environment. It doesn't matter that the
No, but they are starting to cut down on fossil fuels.
But they're not making their people, and this is what the problem is in this country, is that we're being forced into something and we're having to pay hand over fist for something that people are looking at going, well, hang on a minute, if we're doing all of this and paying out much more to sort out the climate change, then how can these larger countries with much more pollution get away with it? And I think when you look at the effect it has on people's finances, it's a really legitimate argument.
The danger is we're ending up in the same kind of problem we had with the ageing population. We knew 50 years ago an ageing population, no government would take action because it wasn't on their watch, it was somebody else's problem. And it feels to me that people are saying the same about climate change. Let's not bother to do too much now because it won't be our problem. 2050, none of the present lot of politicians are going to be in power by that time.
I'd just like to point out that the Labour government are doing a really good job on the elderly people, though, by freezing Granny at Christmas. I mean, that's going to probably bump off a few and that gets rid of that problem, doesn't it?
It kind of gets through the NHS waiting list as well.
Well, absolutely, it does, you know. Free.
Okay, right.
Oh, no, I'm going to have to leave you for that one. But there's loads more coming up on today's show. But first, we've been talking about freezing to death over Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody. So let's have a look at exactly how cold it's going to be. Here's the weather with Marco for you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're seeing a lot of cold and windy weather across the UK today. In the run-up to and during the Christmas period, it will be turning much milder, but there will be quite a bit of cloud around as well. Low pressure's anchored towards the northeast of the UK at the moment, tightly packed isobars indicating a strong north to northwesterly airstream. And in fact, we hold on to strong winds across the north and west, particularly as we go into the evening. A wind warning in force until 9 o'clock this evening across those northern and western areas. Plenty of showers too for the first part of the night, and into the early hours, 1 or 2 showers lingering across the northeast of Scotland. Elsewhere, a lot of dry weather around, some clear weather too, and cloud increasing across Northern Ireland later in the night there. Temperatures generally holding a little bit above freezing, but in one or two spots could see a touch of frost by Monday morning, and one or two icy patches across the north and northeast of the UK as well. As for Monday itself, well, we get off to a bit of a wintry start still across the hills of Scotland there. One or two wintry showers at this stage of the day. The best of the early clear sunny weather towards the south and west of the country. Meanwhile, cloud increasing further across Northern Ireland, bringing some patchy rain in across northern and western spots. The odd shower feeding in across parts of Wales and northwest England, feeding in through the Cheshire Gap in that northwesterly wind. Whereas towards the south and east of England, more in the way of fine, clear or sunny weather around to start the day on Monday. As we go through the day then, the south and east of the country holds on to plenty of sunshine, turning brighter rather than sunny into the afternoon as cloud starts to increase from the west. And that cloud thickening across many northern and western spots, some outbreaks of rain moving in from the west. And again, a fairly breezy picture out across those western spots. Temperatures start to pick up across those western areas up to 8 or 9 degrees during the afternoon, whereas across the east and southeast we hold on to some fairly chilly weather. Into the evening, the cloud and outbreaks of rain move their way east and southeastwards across most of the UK, turning milder all the while too, and that sets the scene for a fairly cloudy but mild Christmas period. Most of the rain reserved for the northwest of the UK, but certainly a mild picture, temperatures into the teens.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Bansky's Girl with Balloon is arguably one of the artist's most recognisable images. So when a limited edition print signed by the artist was stolen from Grove Gallery in London, an investigation was launched by the Metropolitan Police's flying squad. The work was thankfully retrieved. The desire to own great works of art has once again become evident this week, albeit a little further afield on the continent. Police in Italy have uncovered a criminal network forging artworks by Bansky, Andy Warhol, Pablo Picasso and others. Investigators said that they've seized more than 2,100 fake pieces of art with a potential market value of about £165 million. With me to discuss that case is the Chief Executive of Grove Gallery, James Ryan.
The art world needs to tighten up. It is known as a bit of a Wild West out there because people will try and chance it with these forgeries. You're quite right, there's only one actual original, but even auction houses have been hoodwinked before.
The burglary that you suffered is sub judice, so we have to be careful what we say about it. But it must have been a bit of a shock to you. I mean, was it a broken window, a smashed door?
At 10, 11 o'clock at night and just hammer straight through, shoulder barging through the door and then in and out. You know, gone in 60 seconds. I must say, I know...
Obviously, that targeted attack. The person would have known what he or she was after. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I must say, I know they cop a lot of flack, the police force, but the flying squad got the artwork back within 3 days. They were fantastic. So yeah, I've never heard or seen, other than the Thomas Crown affair type film, I just didn't think it'd be happening to little old me, in Fitzrovia, but it did, and thankfully we got it back.
GB News.
Good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 22nd of December. I'm saying that quite slowly because it is only 3 days to go. And you're not ready, are you? I know you're not ready. Please tell me you're not ready, because I'm not ready. This is the weekend on GB News, so thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it on a busy, festive Sunday. Now, the overnight story breaking is in Germany. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets calling for mass deportations following the massacre which killed 5 people, including one 9-year-old child. It comes as the Saudi Arabian government claimed they repeatedly warned German authorities about the man suspected of driving a car into the grounds. We'll bring you all the latest on that breaking story. And Rachel Reeves is the Grinch of Christmas, as it's revealed 45% of your charity donations go straight to the government. Reports also suggest a new grocery tax, is there anything left for them to tax, aimed at achieving net zero targets, is set to cost British households up to 1.5 billion annually. Yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody. And if you're thinking of escaping, planes, trains and automobiles, passengers face a last-minute scramble to find travel alternatives as mass cancellations continue to cause havoc up and down the country. Have you been able to make it home for Christmas? Are you even going to bother after this? And a bridge over troubled water. Nigel Farage has offered his services to our new US ambassador, Lord Mandelson, who's been described as a moron by one of Trump's top aides. Just how important is reform UK leader going to be over the next 4 years? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. Say it all the time, sitting here in green sparkles, but that little opening ceremony, it's lovely. It's very relaxing during the spring and the summer. But don't you think you could do with like a Christmas tree at this time of year? Just me? Let me know what you think at gbnews.com/your say. Indeed, let me know what you think about anything we started talking about today, or anything you want to have a quick gossip about. After all, it is a Sunday before Christmas. We're here for a chit chat. We're all having a nice chilled time. As I said, very easy. gbnews.com/your say and joining the conversation. One of the reasons I'm having a really nice time, I've got 2 wonderful people with me, political commentator and former special advisor, the wonderful Claire Pearsall, as well as senior political commentator for GB News, Nigel Nelson, who's also her husband, possibly soon to be ex-husband, but, you know, we'll see if we get through the next hour. But before we get stuck into today's stories, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. Just coming up to 3 minutes past 2. Well, the top story this afternoon, 5 people are now known to have died, over 200 left injured after a driver used an emergency vehicle lane to plough into a Christmas market in the east of Germany. Authorities there are continuing to come under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received last year, but at the time deemed unspecific. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and ministers have faced angry hecklers during a visit to the site as questions now mount over security and how the attack could have happened. Social media giant X, owned by Elon Musk, is also being scrutinised for failing to act on the suspect's threatening posts before the attack on Friday night. Security has now been ramped up across Germany and the rest of Europe, with armed police patrolling festive events and Christmas markets. Here, meanwhile, Labour's Lucy Powell has admitted the economy is disappointing, likening the government's efforts to turning around a huge oil tanker. She says Labour's inherited unprecedented challenges, including falling living standards and underfunded public services. It comes after the Office for National Statistics reported the economy shrank by 0.1% in September and October, with no growth expected at all this quarter. Well, the Commons leader told GB News this morning that the government does share the public's frustration, but she insists progress is being made.
People voted for change at the election because the country was, let's face it, going to the Swanee. We had the economy tanking, with living standards having fallen for the first time in a generation, and public services absolutely on their knees, with huge waiting lists in our NHS and elsewhere. So it's a bit like turning a really big oil tanker around. We've begun to start moving it in the right direction, but there are many fundamental challenges facing the country.
Well, in response to those comments from Lucy Powell, the Shadow Housing Secretary Kevin Hollinrake told us that the situation he thinks is far worse now under a Labour government.
The economy is tanking, as we know. Business confidence has gone through the floor. Family businesses are having to make difficult decisions in terms of their investment because of things like business property relief changes, and same with family farms. So you're seeing this right across the economy why business confidence is dropping, and that's having a real-world impact on our economy.
In other news, household shopping bills are set to rise by up to £1.4 billion a year. That's under a new grocery tax aimed at meeting the UK's net zero targets. The levy will charge businesses based on packaging materials, with costs largely passed to consumers, adding as much as £56 to annual bills. Critics are warning the scheme, rolling out next year, will only fuel inflation and impose red tape. But supporters argue it's a vital step towards cutting waste and boosting recycling, with the government also promising 21,000 jobs in the sector. The BBC has come under fire today for refusing to air Freezing This Christmas. That's a parody of Sir Keir Starmer about the withdrawal of winter fuel payments, despite its chart-topping success. The track, raising over £47,000 for Age UK, has been labelled a victim of two-tier broadcasting, as critics point to past political songs like Stand Down Margaret that were aired without issue. Dean Ager, the singer behind the parody, is planning to perform the song at Parliament Square in protest. But the BBC says its decision reflects what the audience expect to hear and have denied any claims of bias. The Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, says he is deeply sorry over his handling of a priest at the centre of a sexual abuse case. David Tudor was banned from ministry this year after admitting to serious abuse, but was twice reappointed to senior church roles. The Archbishop admits things could have been handled differently, but insists legal constraints prevented earlier action. Bishop Helen Ann Hartley says it's now impossible for Mr Cottrell to remain in that post. And the pre-Christmas getaway grind, well, it's not letting up anytime soon. The AA has predicted 21.3 million drivers will hit the road today, capping off what has already been a record-breaking weekend of traffic. Yellow weather warnings for gales until 9 p.m. are also adding to the strain, grounding flights at Heathrow and stopping a number of ferry services. And the Met Office is warning of continued disruption, even possible power cuts into this evening. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Sam. OK, right, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Could this be Christmas? Could this Christmas be Sir Keir Starmer's first and last in Downing Street? Writing in the Daily Mail today, Dan Hodges said that Labour MPs are starting to think the unthinkable as confidence in the beleaguered Prime Minister continues to be dented by a series of unpopular decisions. And now those closest to Starmer have said the relentless strain of the job is severely taking its toll and the PM badly needs a holiday. Is this a fair analysis, or do we all need to be a little bit kinder to the Prime Minister as we approach the New Year, season of goodwill and all that kind of thing? You know, should we give them a little bit of a hug? Let's see what my panel make of this one. A political commentator and former special advisor Claire Pearsall, as well as a senior political commentator for GB News, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, does Keir Starmer need a little bit of a hug at the moment? I mean, it's a season of goodwill. Should we start feeling a little bit sorry for him?
I don't think you should feel sorry for any politician, because they chose the job they're in, so they have to just get on with it. On the holiday front, yeah, he needs one. I mean, I think that he couldn't take a holiday before the election. He's had 6 months in government. It's been a pretty rocky ride one way or another, and everyone needs a break. So I understand he's going to try and take some time off over New Year. I think that's the right thing to do, just to recharge his batteries.
Claire, it has been a bit of a rocky road, to be fair. Not exactly a great honeymoon period, but you could argue it's of his own making.
Well, it is. A lot of it is of his own making, and the fact that he's taken every opportunity to leave the country to go jetting off somewhere. I mean, this was the
on
man...
behalf of the country.
But this was a man who wanted to finish it sort of, 5 o'clock on a
complaining about
Friday.
the green issue earlier on.
Exactly, yeah. How many flights is he allowed to take? I think that's
Well, he can hardly paddle there to
but he
Saudi
seems
Arabia,
to have
can
taken
he?
every single opportunity to go to every single thing abroad that he possibly can, whether it was needed or not. So, yes, I agree that politicians need to have a break. I don't have an issue with that. I mean, we only have to look at the amount of holidays that Boris Johnson went off on to know that the country still runs without the Prime Minister. But don't make such a big thing about it. Why are we all having this conversation? Oh, we look very tired. Oh, it's a lot of stress. Well, yes, running the country isn't easy. You've been through an election, you've got to get your troops in order, but you've also made such a hash of it to begin with that all of this is of your own making.
This is my prediction for 2025. Claire will spend all of it grumbling about the Labour government.
Yes.
Which is not alone, to be fair. I mean,
me and half the country.
They're not exactly rating that well, Nigel. Even you have to admit they're not covering themselves in glory.
I do think that one of the problems, and I still don't know quite why it's happening, is that they're getting the messaging very badly wrong. And it's strange because I know the communications people at Number 10. These are very good, experienced people. And all I can imagine is the reason things are not getting across is because their political masters aren't listening to them.
So that's the interesting point. You say the communications team, I think everyone would agree the communication has not been great, but you say the communications team is good.
Yes.
OK. So, therefore, it's the people that are in charge of them, their bosses, i.e. Keir Starmer, that are messing it up.
Well, it feels to me, and I don't know the real answer to this, but it feels to me like that the politicians aren't listening to their communications experts. Otherwise, some of the things that are happening wouldn't have happened. The good example would have been when Keir Starmer attacked the civil service and said that they were part of a tepid bath of managed decline. Any communications expert would have taken that out of a speech. You just don't do that publicly. Rachel Reeves, who suddenly turned around to the CBI and said, no more taxes are going to be raised. No chancellor can say that. And she obviously got a bit of a rollicking from the Prime Minister the following day. She changed tack and went completely back on that. But again, somebody like Alistair Campbell would have seen that and said, no, that's coming out. So I think it's some of the messaging that's going wrong, and get that right and it won't seem quite so bad.
It's the messaging that's going wrong by their own doing. It's not the communications team, it's the people in charge that are doing that.
Well, that's right.
Do they not know what they're doing?
Well, doesn't look like it, does it? I mean, they are making some real mistakes right from the start, and we had this with Freebiegate. So we had expensive clothing.
I'll give you that one. That was a mistake.
That's kind of you. Thank you. Happy Christmas, But you had that, and then you've had the reset that apparently wasn't a reset, but it was a reset.
That was a messaging failure.
Exactly.
Because it wasn't a reset.
So many. But there are so many things.
What he was doing was that he was putting flesh on the bones of the agenda for change he was coming up with. When you actually saw it, 5 of the 6 items were straightforward, the missions he'd actually set out before.
But did he need to actually have a press conference to say, but these are the things that I promised to do that I haven't really done, so I've just reworded them a little bit and put them in...
Well, it did put some flesh on the bones of what he was doing.
It did?
Well, it did, yes, but the problem was the narrative became a reset because when they originally announced it, they didn't give any indication of what was actually going to be in it. So, as a result, the media went off on the idea of, oh, this is a relaunch, a reset or whatever. It was never intended to be that. It was a straightforward progress report about where they were and where they were going.
But when they put out the op note to everybody to say this is what the Prime Minister is going to be doing, it looked like a reset, it smelt like a reset.
Well, because there was no detail there.
Exactly, but don't put something out with no
I agree with you, and
it.
that's my point about the communications, that a communications professional would never have put out that announcement the way it went.
So you're admitting that he doesn't know what he's doing?
Yeah.
I'm admitting that somewhere along the line, the communications are going wrong. That's not just going out, that's actually internally. And what I don't know is, given that the people in there are really good and they do know what they're doing, it seems to be...
the politicians don't?
Well, it's the politicians are not listening.
But also, I think that you've had a group of people who have planned very, very hard to win an election without considering what it takes to run a country and be a government. And I think there is the real problem, is that they were so focused on winning at all costs that they didn't really seem to think, well, we actually now have to run a country and we have to be a coherent group of people with policies that some people won't like. They just haven't got that. They've just sort of stumbled into it going, oh look, number 10. Oh, right, we're in charge
Claire, you may
now,
not agree
aren't
with
we?
the decisions made, but they have been making a lot of decisions. I mean, 30 different pieces of legislation went through in the first 6 months.
And how many of those are a hangover of the Conservative government?
Well,
It's
I mean,
quite
rail
soft
privatisation is not a hangover from the Conservative government.
No,
the
but
creation of GBNews is
like
not a hangover from the Conservative government.
Pensions triple lock that you're trying to take credit for, that's actually came in under us. Some of the changes to migration...
Well, the pension triple lock's been around a long time. I don't think it'll last forever anyway. I mean, there's going to come a point where the triple lock is going to end up going.
But you've got a Chancellor who is boasting about looking after pensioners next year because
they will keep the triple lock going until the end of this Parliament.
But they're trying to take credit for it.
Let's talk about another decision they have made, and that's to appoint our Lord Mandelson to our ambassador to Donald Trump.
Yes. Not getting necessarily well, is it?
Is that a wise decision?
Well, I know Peter Mandelson very well, and my view is, yes, it is a good decision. I think he'll be very good in the job. If he was an ambassador anywhere, he'd be good. The problem at the moment is that Donald Trump and the Labour government really don't see eye to eye on things, and also there is a history of bad-mouthing Trump.
They haven't been, I mean...
That is the problem.
Being called a moron by the person you're meant to be...
Yeah, but when you've got an aide of Trump saying that Peter is a moron, Peter is not a moron. That is a ridiculous thing to say. Whether or not he will get on as well with the Trump administration as, say, a career diplomat, we'll have to see.
Well, the latest on this story is that obviously Nigel Farage is offering to help Lord Mandelson out because we do know that Donald Trump and Farage and Elon Musk seem to get on quite well. So Nigel Farage today is offering to be a bridge to maintain that important US-UK special relationship. So do you think it's a good idea? Should Lord Mandelson start working closely with Nigel Farage?
Now, I don't know Lord Mandelson at all, and I don't think he's the right person for the job. But
Why?
I think that you need to have a diplomat. I think you need to have somebody not with the amount of baggage that Lord Mandelson comes with. I also think that you need somebody within the diplomatic circle that understands how these things work. I'm not one for giving jobs to your mates, which is very much how this feels. But I would probably urge a little bit of caution with an offer from Nigel Farage. I mean, yes, he gets on with Donald Trump, but also he may not have the same priorities as the current Prime Minister, and it just seems a very complicated
But Peter ought to listen to him, shouldn't he? I mean,
I don't think he should dismiss it, but I think you just need to be very, very careful about how much outside influence you take.
But you could certainly listen to the advice that Nigel would give, which would seem to be reasonable, because he does know Trump. He knows how the new administration is likely to tick, and it doesn't mean that Peter Mandelson has got to follow everything that Nigel Farage tells him.
And that's my point.
But at least inform him about how to deal with Trump, the kind of things Trump is likely to do, and the big one, which is going to be the tariffs that Trump might impose on our exports.
I don't disagree with that. I just think you have to be very, very careful with listening to too many different people on this subject. But
just one. Just Nigel would do, actually.
But you don't know who else is offering the same kind of service, do you? I think that Nigel Farage does know Trump very well and he knows how to handle him. And I think that is a really good way, a good conversation for him to have. But you don't know how many other people are saying to Lord Mandelson, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I think he needs to just be a little bit careful. But as I say, I don't think he's the right person for the job in the first place. I don't necessarily think he's suited for it. would have preferred to see someone else.
But he is somebody with a great deal of experience, both in government, over in Europe as a trade commissioner. These are the kind of things that are really useful, given what Trump is planning to do when he gets into the White House.
But just because he's got all that experience doesn't mean that he's got the personal relationship or the ability to build a personal relationship.
He's also quite charming, so, I mean, I'm sure that...
Having never met him, I don't know, but he doesn't strike me as that kind of person. When you look at the character of Donald Trump and the character of Lord Mandelson, I'm not suggesting that that's the greatest meeting of minds.
To be fair, Mandelson did imply recently that he would be happy to signal his willingness to set aside political differences with Nigel Farage in a podcast and say that, you know, he would listen to what Farage...
Yeah, which just seems to be really sensible.
Which is quite grown up, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, why shouldn't you talk to someone? You can talk to people in other parties. It's one of these things everybody thinks in the House of Commons that you stay in your own lane, you never speak to anybody else. You do, and it's how these ideas get passed around, and it's the knowledge that you receive from other people, whether you agree with them or not, actually makes you better at forming the decisions as to why people like Nigel are wrong on so many issues.
Yeah.
You can say that. The problem a lot of these politicians have got is stuff they said because of social media never goes away. It comes back to haunt them. So Mandelson describing Trump in, not that long ago, 2019, as a danger to the world and little short of a white nationalist and racist.
Not helpful.
Going to be an interesting conversation to have when they first meet. And Trump can always go, well, I'm not dealing with you at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is the problem that this government has got, that so many of them said things about Trump during his last administration that are now coming back to haunt them. They've got to somehow get rid of that baggage. I think that should be possible. Let's assume that Trump is a grown-up. I'm not convinced of this, but let's assume that he is. If he is, then he will be happy to put what Peter Mandelson said aside and get on with him as the ambassador he is, not as the person he was when he made those remarks.
OK, and obviously he seemed to get on quite well with David Lammy when it meant at him, and the Foreign Secretary also said that Donald Trump was a neo-Nazi sympathiser. So
not helpful again.
You can get on with people. No, let's say really. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. And for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to our website, which is at gbnews.com. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. We'll be discussing the role of religion at Christmas and just how important is faith at this time of year. It's an important discussion, I think. Don't go anywhere. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And the latest series of Big Brother has just wrapped up, and as always, the housemates managed to cause a stir.
Yeah, that's an understatement. After 5 weeks of drama and twists and turns, 6 housemates were left to battle it out for a £90,000 prize.
Well, our next guest was there to the bitter end, coming third in this year's competition.
6 weeks you were in there.
Oh, I tell you what, it was a long time.
What goes through your mind? Is it do you start to go a bit sort of what do they call it, cabin fever?
Yeah.
Do you go a bit nutty?
Like at times, not that I've ever been in prison, but I kind of likened it to being in jail, particularly when we were having to eat the porridge with water, no sugar, or that was difficult. And the feeling that you just can't leave. I mean, you can, but. It was,
You can,
tough.
but you won't get your hands on that prize money.
No, exactly.
You made it to the end.
Yeah.
And it's quite a big house, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you feel as though you can get away from housemates if they're annoying you a bit, or does it feel like your hot house with
no,
people you don't like very much?
If you're sort of, if you're not comfortable with a certain conversation or something like that, you can always take yourself and move away. But can you have time to yourself? No. Not really. I mean, even you might think, do you know what, I'll just go and lock myself in the toilet for a few minutes. There's a camera and there's a mic in there, so you can't escape that. And then you're obviously wearing a mic, so there is that little feeling of, I could just do with having 5 minutes to myself, but you can't really get it.
You've met up with one side of the house, but not the other side yet. But is that still on the cards, do you think?
I hope so, yeah, because I liked every single person in that house, despite a few whispers on the internet, like, do you not like this? I liked everybody in the house, never had a bad word with anybody, so...
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company on this festive Sunday, the last Sunday of Advent, indeed. Now, whilst many people associate the festive season with presents and vast quantities of food, yes, me too, it is important to remember that Christmas is first and foremost a religious festival, with Christians celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ and the hope that they believe comes with it. And if you're a regular viewer, you've been watching our Advent messages that we've had every single day, and they're very popular and mean a lot. I think they do mean a lot, even if you're not particularly religious, which is a strange thing. It's all about, I don't know, the thought behind the whole thing, even if you don't actually believe in the text themselves. So what is the importance of faith at this time of year? To answer that question, I'm joined by a former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth, Dr. Gavin Ashenden. Dr. Ashenden, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I thought about having this debate after reading some of the comments online about what's happened in Germany recently. And one of the first comments I read this morning was, OK, let's ban Islam as a religion. And it brought me up short, especially at this time of year, because it's like, well, the last people that tried to ban a religion were the Nazis with the Jews, and look what happened there. So how important is faith at this time of year?
Well, faith is very important, because faith is what happens when we try and ask some of the questions about why we're here. To be a human being is to be faced by some very important questions like, do I matter? How much do I matter? How do I manage life? Life is quite difficult. What are the things that matter most to me in life, like love and forgiveness and joy and sense of completion? And so faith asks those questions, and religion or Christianity offers an answer, and the answer is always Jesus. And Christmas means Jesus' party, Jesus' festival. The reason Jesus matters, if we go to the end of the New Testament, is we hear the words, "Behold, I stand at the door of your heart and I'm knocking. If you hear me knock, let me in. I'll come and do this with you." So it's about having a mended life where we do life with God. And when we do life with God, we get given resources of love, forgiveness, hope, purpose, which make life possible, and then also give us a sense that life is going to continue. So Christmas is everything. I don't know how people manage without purpose, without hope, without God. Jesus gives all of those things.
And the one question you must always get asked, if you are a member of whatever faith or whatever religion, is how can God, whoever your own God is, let the appalling things happen that we see happening? Recently the death of those 5 people in Germany.
Well, that's one of the hardest questions we face. And again, without faith, I don't even know where you begin with that. But the answer that Christians have discovered is, I suppose, to answer it with another question, and it would, how would you like to be a robot? How would you like to be pre-programmed with no choice? And then most people would say, well, no, that would take away all my humanity. That would stop me being me. I don't want to be constrained and be a robot. And then God says, well, if I give you choice, you may go wrong. You may choose the wrong things. So the price of your freedom is things going wrong. But do you want to give up your freedom? And we say, no, we want to keep our freedom. Then God says, well, okay, well, things are going to go wrong, but don't despair. I'll come and put them right. And so we're kind of in this journey where God gives us freedom, things go wrong, and God then says, I'm coming in Jesus to put things right. So all the things you've described are part of what happens when people make very bad choices. I make bad choices. I dare say you've made a few. Everyone listening has made some. But God says, don't despair. Emmanuel, God with us. I'll come and sort things out. And so one of the things that Christians say unashamedly is stop trying to live life by on your own. Stop trying to make choices without God. They'll go wrong. And, one of the things we say to the politicians all the time is, look at how dreadfully your choices turn out. You need more of God, not less of God. And that's what Christmas is intended to say to us.
So what would you make of the comment that I read this morning about banning, whatever religion it is, banning a religion?
Well, if you believe in freedom, you don't believe in banning. What you believe in is giving people the opportunity to do things better. As it happens, without being rude to my Islamic neighbors, I understand Muhammad. I'm very interested in Muhammad's life and Muhammad's teachings. But then I look at Jesus and I find myself very interested in Jesus' life and Jesus' teachings. And I have to choose between the two. And so I choose Jesus. I think it's better to forgive. I think Jesus raised people from the dead. Jesus forgave people's sins. I frankly don't understand why anyone would not choose Jesus if they actually knew about him. But the problem is people don't know who he is, but partly because we're not allowed to talk about him anymore. You can't go onto the streets in Great Britain and stand up and talk about Jesus. The police will close you down. You're causing offence. We don't want to know. So part of the difficulty is we don't want to ban anybody, but we find ourselves being banned in our own country. And that's a tragedy. Not because we want to be heard for ourselves, but we want people to have the choice to make better choices.
Interesting, very much. Thank you for joining us, former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth, Dr. Gavin Ashington. Thank you very much for joining us. Lots to take in there, Nigel. And I was also listening to a debate this morning about a nativity play where they didn't use the word Christmas, and people were getting upset about that one as well. Does Dr. Gavin have a point there about being a Christian in this country at Christmas time is actually quite hard now?
Yes, I think it is. I think that people, if you say you're a Christian, people kind of look at you as if you're a bit odd, and going to church becomes a bit odd. It's things like that. And the points he was making there, though, are actually terribly important. It's a time to actually think about who you are, what the world is all about. I mean, you asked a very pertinent question there about why is evil allowed? If you have if Christ is good and Christ is God, then why evil? And what Gavin was pointing out is, but we have free will. We have free will to do bad things. Those are the kind of things you can actually think about over Christmas.
I mean, Claire, as you mentioned earlier on, you and Nigel have just returned from Auschwitz. Obviously, an incredibly emotional place to go, and from people that tried to ban the Jewish faith.
Yeah.
And look how that ended up. So what do you make of this comment that Islam is evil, we should ban Islam? And if you're an ordinary Muslim living in this country or anywhere else, certainly in Germany at the moment, you must be feeling awful.
Yeah, and I think it's what really brought it home to me, visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau, and you saw what was done to a group of people who had a belief system that the Nazi Party didn't agree with, and how that has changed the world. No one will ever want to see that again. And trust me, if anyone hasn't been to Auschwitz, I really recommend it. It is the most immensely moving place. I don't think we need to ban religion. I think that it's very disappointing that we cannot speak about Christianity in a Christian country. And Nigel's right. If you say that you go to church regularly or that you are a Christian and you believe in Jesus, then people look at you as if you're a little bit strange and will move away from you. Why? For some people, that is their belief system, and they should be allowed to talk about it. They should be allowed to celebrate that in this country. They absolutely should. Just as much as somebody of a Catholic faith or a Hindu faith or Judaism, you should be able to talk about your faith, and we should be able to listen and accept that people have different views and beliefs to you.
Indeed, and understand, especially at this time of year. OK, thank you very much. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and there's plenty more coming up on today's show. We're talking Christmas food, the perfect hangover cures, and how to deal with your family over the coming days. These two might have something to say on that one. Don't go anywhere, but first, let's get the news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. It is just coming up to 35 minutes past 2. Well, let's start in Germany, where we now know that 5 people are dead, over 200 injured, after a driver ploughed into a Christmas market in Magdeburg. German authorities are now coming under fire after warnings about the suspect were reportedly received last year, but deemed unspecific at the time. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and ministers have faced angry hecklers during a visit to the scene of that incident, with questions mounting over security and how the attack could happen. Social media giant X, owned by Elon Musk, is also being scrutinised for failing to act on the suspect's threatening posts before Friday's attack. Security has now been ramped up across Germany, with armed police patrolling festive events and Christmas markets. Labour's Lucy Powell has admitted the economy is disappointing, likening the government's efforts to turning around a huge oil tanker. She says Labour inherited unprecedented challenges, including falling living standards and underfunded public services. It comes after the Office for National Statistics reported the economy shrank by 0.1% in September and October, with no growth expected this quarter at all. Well, she told GB News this morning that the Labour government does share the public's frustration, but insists progress is still being made.
People voted for change at the election because the country was, let's face it, going to the Swanee. We had the economy tanking, with living standards having fallen for the first time in a generation, and public services absolutely on their knees, with huge waiting lists in our NHS and elsewhere. So it's a bit like turning a really big oil tanker around. We've begun to start moving it in the right direction, but there are many fundamental challenges facing the country.
However, the Shadow Housing Secretary, Kevin Hollinrake, claimed the situation is far worse under the Labour government than the previous Conservative government.
The economy is tanking, as we know. Business confidence has gone through the floor. Family businesses are having to make difficult decisions in terms of their investment because of things like business property relief changes, and same with family farms. So you're seeing this right across the economy why business confidence is dropping, and that's having a real-world impact on our economy.
And household shopping bills are set to rise by up to £1.4 billion a year under a new grocery tax aimed at meeting the UK's net zero targets. The levy will charge businesses based on packaging materials, with costs largely passed to consumers, and could add as much as £56 to annual bills. Critics warn the scheme will fuel inflation and impose red tape, while councils pocket the funds without lowering taxes. Supporters, though, argue it's a vital step towards cutting waste and boosting recycling, with the government also promising 21,000 jobs in the sector. That's it from me for this afternoon. Sophia Wensler will be here with a full roundup at 3 o'clock, and Dawn will be straight back with you after this break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We've got some cold and windy weather in store across the UK at the present time. Things will be turning milder as we go through the Christmas period, but a lot of cloud around too. Certainly a windy picture today. A low pressure system towards the northeast of the UK, tightly packed isobars, indicating a brisk north to northwesterly airstream, and certainly very windy out and about through the course of the afternoon. A wind warning in force across many northern and western areas until 9 o'clock this evening. Could see gusts of wind around 50 to 70 miles an hour in a few spots. Lots of showers feeding in that north to northwesterly flow as well. Wintry, particularly towards the hills of Scotland and across some other northwestern areas. So the best of the sunshine the further south and east you go. And wherever you are, it's a chilly feel, 6 or 7 degrees at best, but feeling closer to freezing out and about given the strength of the wind. As we head into the evening and through the overnight period, those showers start to ease down, but we hold on to quite a few across Scotland, certainly through the first part of the evening. Still some wintry showers to contend with in places. The best of the clearer weather at this stage towards the south and west of the country. For Northern Ireland, some clear spells, 1 or 2 showers towards the north and west there, and 1 or 2 showers feeding through the Cheshire Gap into the West Midlands too, into parts of North East Wales, but many southern spots ending the day on a dry note with some clear spells around. The winds and the showers start to ease in as we go through the overnight period. Still gales for a time towards the north and west, but as I say, those winds will ease down. Plenty of clear weather then going into the early hours of Monday. Could well see a touch of frost by Monday morning, certainly across some northern spots, 1 or 2 icy patches in places as well. Temperatures in towns and cities generally holding up above freezing, close to freezing though in 1 or 2 really sheltered spots. As for Monday itself, well, we start the day plenty of sunshine towards the south and east of the country, and holding on to some sunshine here into the afternoon. But notice towards the north and west, cloud thickening from the west, some outbreaks of rain moving in across many northern and western spots as we go through the day, accompanied by some milder air. But notice towards the south and east, it does stay quite chilly. Temperatures towards the south and east of the country, 5 or 6 degrees. Out towards the west and northwest, 8 degrees at best.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. A festive Sunday, the last Sunday of Advent indeed. Now, Christmas is only a few days away. It's the 22nd today, just in case you were as confused as I am. And festive food is indeed flying off the shelves. On many dinner tables throughout the country, you'll find a pork pie. But in Leicestershire, it's a tradition for families to eat a Melton Mowbray pork pie on Christmas morning. For breakfast. Huh? That sounds horrible to me. We sent our East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis, to find out more.
In the rural capital of food, the festive season is big for business. Famed for Stilton cheese and the Melton Mowbray pork pie, sales rise dramatically before Christmas. Connor is the head chef at March House Farm near Melton.
I would describe a pork pie as the traditional farmhouse comfort food. To me, the beauty of this pork pie is it's a labour of love. So here you won't see any added nasties, there's no preservatives.
A Melton Mowbray pork pie follows a strict recipe and can only be made locally. Hand-raised using ingredients from the farm, the team are preparing hundreds ahead of the big day. And not just for customers.
Not only do I enjoy making pork pies, I also enjoy eating pork pies.
Crunchy pastry and a jelly filling, Melton Mowbray pork pies are eaten every day across Britain. But in Leicestershire and the wider East Midlands, families wake up on Christmas Day and tuck into a pork pie for breakfast. Jo is manager at the farm.
We're going to be really busy, but we'll make sure we get those pork pies sorted for you.
It's been in her family for generations.
It's very popular throughout the year, but leading up to Christmas, hundreds and hundreds of pork pies will fly out of here. It might seem odd to other people, but to have a pork pie on Christmas morning is certainly worth it.
Pork pies became popular in the 1700s during hunting season. Matthew O'Callaghan from the Melton Mowbray Pork Pie Association has fought to protect the local delicacy. And for good reason. Rural foods like Stilton and the Mowbray pie add £100 million to the local economy.
People are going for a premium product and they know that they're going to be paying that little bit more for Melton Mowbray pork pie. And if you want the best, you have to pay for the best.
Melton Mowbray pork pies are loved around the world and there are some fans here too.
Well, this time of year is just right for pork pies.
It's fantastic, pork pie. I do love pork pie.
They look nice on your table for Christmas and they match the aesthetic, but they're not very nice and I wouldn't eat them.
While not everyone enjoys a slice of pork pie, for many it's top of their Christmas list. The first thing they think about.
Christmas morning, grab your pork pie, tuck in.
Will Hollis, GB News, Melton Mowbray.
Right, I'm not sure about that. First thing on Christmas morning, the first thing you grab is your pork pie. Not in my house. OK, what about you, Claire? What's the first thing you grab on a Christmas morning?
There's a lovely cup of coffee, I think, is the thing I grab on Christmas morning. I'm not sure I'm ready to eat anything. And then also you've got food for the rest of the day, so... yeah, it's not for me.
But you, like me, don't eat meat, so you're the big pie.
I would go for.
This is a tradition, obviously, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I wouldn't have a pork pie prior to the turkey, though. I think that would be a bit too much. But I have been eating a lot of Christmas pudding for the last month.
Really?
Yeah. As soon as I go into the supermarket and see those individual Christmas puddings, I think, And we've gone through about a dozen, I think, since the beginning of December. So, but apparently there's one on Christmas Day as well that Claire has got
I don't even like them.
squirreled away somewhere.
Pudding after the Christmas dinner itself, eating a Christmas pudding on top of it. It's like,
tends to be Boxing Day for the Christmas pudding because you are absolutely stuffed after Christmas lunch, and ours will be slightly later in the afternoon. Got to go out and deal with the horse and everything first, so it's going to be later in the day. So there's only so much.
The horse gets the Christmas dinner before we do.
Yes. Well, I mean, understandably, she is married to you. I mean, you know, lots of people have been getting in touch saying Claire has a lovely horse. Her horse is lovely. Not sure about the husband.
Oh,
but we love one another, really. But no, it's interesting the traditional foods we eat at Christmas. I mean, pigs in blankets.
Yeah.
I mean, wrapping meat in meat. Where's that come from?
Yeah, I'm not
Why
so.
would you do that?
I'm not so keen on that one. I think that the turkey thing. I mean, I've tried different sort of Christmases. We've had steak for Christmas, for instance, rather than have a turkey. I've had a fajita for Christmas at times. I mean, you know, you should be able to have what you fancy, but still coming back to the turkey, there's something about the tradition of turkey over Christmas that's quite important.
Yes, and Brussels sprouts, obviously.
Definitely Brussels sprouts.
Oh, yeah. There's always sprouts.
Yes, indeed. And chocolate. Why do we get around to eating so much chocolate at Christmas? There's a royal story today.
So I do that all year round too. So that's it.
Yeah, well, the Cadburys have lost the royal warrant today for the first time in a long time. Evidently, they're fallen out of favour with the royal household, probably because they're not environmentally friendly. I think was the story I read. But I mean, we're similar age groups, and it's like the highlight of Christmas Day used to be the Cadbury stocking.
Oh,
do you remember that? The net.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and used to sort of like just eat the whole.
But they were
breakfast.
Big bars of chocolate as well, not these tiny little things that you seem to get these days. I mean, I have hidden 2 tubs of chocolates in a cupboard that Nigel can't find, and also my son
do you actually go looking for it?
I do go looking for it, especially about 2 in the morning when I get some...
The worst thing in the world is to buy chocolates as presents, and then you don't have time to wrap them up. So you put them under the tree to wrap up at some point.
And they disappear.
And then you're sitting there going... I wonder. I can always go and get another box.
Between Nigel and my son, if you leave them unattended, not wrapped up, they will just go. Things like Terry's chocolate orange. That is Christmas in a small little box for me, that is.
Have you ever read the nutritional content of a Terry's chocolate orange?
I don't need to. It's Christmas. It doesn't count.
Exactly that. What do you sort of think out there? gbnews.com/your say. We had an etiquette expert on yesterday talking about Christmas dinner. When was the correct time to eat it? Before the King's speech? After the King's speech?
When you're hungry. When the chef decides.
Common sense. Any case, if you are having a pork pie for breakfast on Christmas morning, good luck with that one. We have to move on, unfortunately. But let me know, gbnews.com/your say. What are you doing on Christmas Day? What are you eating? If you are escaping for some winter sun, for that sangria, maybe, here is a forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations for you.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, welcome to your latest winter sun forecast. If you're travelling over the Christmas period, it's certainly going to remain unsettled for central parts of the Mediterranean. There's an area low pressure brings some strong winds, some heavy rain and also some snow to the higher levels. Something a little bit quieter for parts of Iberia, plenty of sunshine to be had here, but then down towards the Canaries, still the risk of some showers, although it will improve here as we approach Christmas Day itself. Temperatures in Madeira reaching around 20 degrees on Christmas Day.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation. You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is Miss Universe fans hailing the end of wokeness and crediting the Trump effect after a biological woman, there's still some of them around apparently, has won the 2024 crown. She's Miss Denmark, because obviously the last decade, you know, it's just been a beast transgender smurfs from Papua New Guinea. They're the only people allowed to win any beauty contest, you know what I mean? You're not allowed to have any.
There's some of the trans women have won these. You definitely wouldn't say no.
Honestly, I've seen but I've seen some of them that didn't, and some that were clearly just there out of
Have there been more than one trans woman? I didn't realise this.
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got a chart at home. This one isn't trans. Victoria Kjær-Thielvig, 21 of Denmark. Everything about that description says attractive.
Nazis. Okay, I have seen pictures of her. She is very attractive.
Yes.
She is.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how to put it, but she is kind of not retro or vintage or so. She's quite an old-fashioned notion of beauty, just absolutely ice blue eyes.
No penis.
Absolutely extraordinary, clear skin and gorgeous blonde hair. I mean, it's absolutely kind of mid-70s.
Apparently, the sanity's returned to the beauty pageant industry, so they can get back to sexualising 4-year-olds and promoting anorexia like they used to. So
there is that.
She will earn an estimated $250,000 annual salary working full-time as Miss Universe, and will live in a luxurious New York City apartment as she carries out her duties, which involve glass coffee tables and rich Saudi businessmen.
Glass coffee tables. And visiting other planets and solar systems and constellations, I would imagine, of Miss Universe.
Being concerned about animals.
Yes, absolutely, and wanting to bring about world peace. I miss those days.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, welcome back. We're running out of time on the show, unfortunately, but lots of you have been getting in touch, and I did say I would read as many out. Some of you are being a bit saucy, it has to be said. So let's start with some I can actually read out. This one is on Starmer's performance so far. Andy says, Dawn, this isn't a communication problem, this is a Starmer problem. Get rid of him. Well, the debate was about whether he should go on holiday and have a rest. Maybe you mean a longer holiday. On a similar note, our, who's this one? Dubbing Needle. I'm guessing that's not your real name, is it? You say, new tactic, people. Try and get the sympathy vote for Starmer. Who would have thought? How important Farage will be in the UK-US relations has got you going as well. Chris says, from January the 20th, when America phones Europe, it's going to be to Nigel Farage's phone. Indeed, I wonder. You actually said that first off, didn't you, though, that I wonder how much he's going to need Nigel Farage to help him out?
Yeah, and I think that it was quite interesting that Keir Starmer went up to Nigel Farage in the Commons. It was a very sort of public sort of display of friendship. And I think they will need him. And it doesn't mean that he formulates policy. It doesn't mean that he changes anything. You just listen to what he's got to say.
Indeed. OK, now, we are running out of time, unfortunately, so it's just down to me to thank Claire and Nigel for joining me today. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you all out there for joining us this afternoon. I just wanted to say a personal message from me and everyone here at GB News, and to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. This is the last weekend show before the big day, which, yes, is on Wednesday, by the way. Get ready. I did actually get one present last night. So thank you so much for your company. Really appreciate appreciate it. And thank you for all your lovely comments, even some of the cheeky ones. So Nana is up next at 3 o'clock. We've got a cracking show for you lined up there. And I'm going to be back over the Christmas holiday, keeping you company, wearing as many sparkly jackets as I possibly can. So all that's left to say is thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you too. Thank you for you out there. Merry Christmas to you. But first, before we get to Nana, let's get that all-important weather with Marco.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, here's your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. We're seeing a lot of cold and windy weather across the UK today. In the run-up to and during the Christmas period, it will be turning much milder, but there will be quite a bit of cloud around as well. Low pressure's anchored towards the northeast of the UK at the moment, tightly packed isobars, indicating a strong north to northwesterly airstream. And in fact, we hold on to strong winds across the north and west, particularly as we go into the evening. A wind warning in force until 9 o'clock this evening across those northern and western areas. Plenty of showers too for the first part of the night, and into the early hours, 1 or 2 showers lingering across the northeast of Scotland. Elsewhere, a lot of dry weather around, some clear weather too, and cloud increasing across Northern Ireland later in the night there. Temperatures generally holding a little bit above freezing, but in 1 or 2 spots could see a touch of frost by Monday morning, and 1 or 2 icy patches across the north and northeast of the UK as well. As for Monday itself, well, we get off to a bit of a wintry start still across the hills of Scotland there. 1 or 2 wintry showers at this stage of the day. The best of the early clear sunny weather towards the south and west of the country. Meanwhile, cloud increasing further across Northern Ireland, bringing some patchy rain in across northern and western spots. The odd shower feeding in across parts of Wales and northwest England, feeding in through the Cheshire Gap in that northwesterly wind. Whereas towards the south and east of England, more in the way of fine, clear or sunny weather around to start the day on Monday. As we go through the day then, the south and east of the country holds on to plenty of sunshine, turning brighter rather than sunny into the afternoon as cloud starts to increase from the west. And that cloud thickening across many northern and western spots, some outbreaks of rain moving in from the west. And again, a fairly breezy picture out across those western spots. Temperatures start to pick up across those western areas up to 8 or 9 degrees during the afternoon, whereas across the east and southeast we hold on to some fairly chilly weather. Into the evening, cloud and outbreaks of rain move their way east and southeastwards across most of the UK, turning milder all the while too, and that sets the scene for a fairly cloudy but mild Christmas period